And then they were going to perhaps edit it to the local listeners. Well, what happened that day in history is one of the most dramatic moments in radio. Most of that with you this evening. This is a dramatic rather simply, and then it builds, and he is Herb Morrison, by emotion, by some of the fumes, the smoke of this exploding airship, but he keeps his head, he stays with it, he does his job as a newsman, and the listening audience, who didn't hear it on the spot, they heard it very shortly thereafter, because the recording event quickly gotten over to the National Broadcasting Company, and this was the very first time that the National Broadcasting Company played a recorded news event. And, of course, it was heard then all over the country. Morrison described this last flight of the Hindenburg. Dramatic radio at its best. No one could write it this well. This is the way it happened. On May the 6th of 1937, Herb Morrison describes the last flight of the Hindenburg.
On completing the first transatlantic crossing of the 1937 season, Charlie Nielsen, one of our WLS engineers, is here at my side working the controls. We both flew down from Chicago yesterday afternoon aboard one of the giant new 21-passenger flagships of American Airlines. It took us only 3 hours, 55 minutes to fly non-stop from Chicago to New York. When we landed at Newark, we found another flagship of American Airlines waiting to take us to Lakehurst with our equipment when we were ready to go. And incidentally, American Airlines is the only airline in the United States which makes connections with the Hindenburg. And as we came in for a landing on the runway of the field here at Lakehurst, we could easily see that a great event was about to take place. Last-minute preparations were being made to handle the landing of this great ship. To the ship, by that I mean the speed of the travel over water or land. Now, the ship keeps in the air a constant speed, which is in the neighborhood of 80 miles an hour. If it is flying into a wind of, say, 30 miles an hour, as it has been all last night, the 30 miles an hour must be subtracted from its airspeed to give us the speed it travels over land or waters, which would be 50 miles an hour when we make the subtraction. Now, if we had received a tailwind, one that would help it along, then we'd have added the 30 miles to the airspeed, and it would have helped the Hindenburg to travel over land at a total of 110 miles an hour. In that case, the ship would have come in ahead of time this morning, or long before dawn. The Hindenburg made its first appearance shortly after noon today over the New York metropolitan area. All during Wednesday night, Charlie Nielsen and I stayed in constant touch with all the radio communication systems which were in steady contact with the airship, getting last-minute bulletins and so forth. And are we glad to see from the American Airlines passenger office in Newark our air cushions. We warmed them plenty all through the night, believe you me. On the Hindenburg are 39 passengers and a crew of 61. The Hindenburg circled over New York and is pointed for the base here at Lakehurst, where we are now broadcasting this description. Now, you may wonder why the ship didn't land the moment that it arrived at Lakehurst. As a word of explanation, these giant ships cannot be landed, or perhaps, should I say, should not be landed at midday. The reason being there are so many shifting surface winds that would bounce and toss the ship around too much. Now, it must either be landed early in the quiet of the dawn or during the quiet period just around sunset. And it's just about sunset and almost at the end of twilight right now. And raining as hard as could be. Now, those are ideal times early in the morning or late in the evening. Winds and weather conditions have proven to be most satisfactory. In other words, nothing's left to chance or made subject to unnecessary risk. Safety comes first, as it always should. Now, the ship has been over the field several times. It's a beautiful field here. It's a sort of a sandy and grass combination with salvia or hard surface runways in all directions so they can take off and land into the wind from any angle. Now, while we're waiting for the ship to come back over the airport and to come into the mooring mast, let me say a few words about the preparations which have been made here at Lakehurst. Doubtless all of you know that the great part of this Naval Air Base has played in the lighter-than-air transportation here in the United States. The facilities are adequate for the handling of the largest airship built. Just a little piece from where I'm standing is the great mooring mast. To this mast is attached the nose of the airship. It is so constructed that as the winds change, the top of the mast can be turned, allowing the airship to swing with its nose always into the wind. Inasmuch as the Hindenburg is 811 feet long, the mast of necessity must be quite a distance from the hangar, allowing clearance of the ship if it swings around the mast. The landing crew of the air base here is expertly trained to handle these massive ships of the sky. Each man is assigned a particular post, and when the word is shouted that the ship is coming in, this man knows just exactly what is expected of him. That's a fine crew of men, if you've ever seen one. Now, we've been told that the airship is going to make an attempted landing in the rain, and if that is the case, we're going to have a mighty fine description of it for you, because the men will have a difficulty in keeping footing in the sand, and especially since it's wet. Now, the structure is light and yet so strong in the Hindenburg. From the ground, as the ship passed us, we could see the passenger quarters. They're located just about a third of the distance back of the nose and just about a third of the distance from the keel. They're sort of square in shape and seem to extend the entire width of the ship. There are two decks, A and B, A being the main one and the one where most of the passengers assemble during the passage. Lining the sides of the deck are the observation windows. Now, they're slanted so that it will give anyone in the interior a fine view downward. And no doubt as the ship went over a number of times, the people were looking down at the great mass of humanity assembled here in the field. Thousands of people have come out to witness the landing of this great airship. Now, there's a long, wide counter inside the observation section of the ship, and you can look down to the ground below, leaning on a table. And below the table, you see a relief map of the various air routes of the world. So as you travel along in the Hindenburg, you can watch the progress shown up on this map. Deck A is the upper of the two decks, and to get to Deck B, it's necessary for you to walk through a foyer and down a pair of stairs. There you find what is really a combined smoking room and lounge. Passengers are always thrilled when Captain Max Frisch or Captain Ernst Lehmann will take you a trip to the giant airship. So it's many sections, up and down along the aluminum alloy girders, over the catwalks which lead from one area to another, and then you see a maze of bright metal girders everywhere. And after a walk through the ship, you're ready to rest, for you've covered a great amount of space, and you realize that you have traveled a great distance. Now they're coming in to make a landing of the Zeppelin. I'm going to step out here and cover it from the outside, so as I move out, we'll just stand by a second. Well, here it comes, ladies and gentlemen. We're out now outside of the hangar, and what a great sight it is. A thrilling one. It's a marvelous sight. It's coming down out of the sky, pointed directly towards us and toward the mooring mast. The mighty diesel motors just roared, their propellers biting into the air and throwing it back into a gale-like whirlpool. No wonder this great floating palace can travel through the air at such a speed with these powerful motors behind it. The sun is striking the windows of the observation deck on the eastward side and sparkling like glittering jewels on a background of black velvet. And every now and then the propellers are caught in the rays of the sun, and their highly polished surfaces reflect circles of gold. Now, a field that we thought active when we first arrived has turned into a moving mass of cooperative action. The landing crews have rushed to the posts and spots, and orders are being passed along, and last-minute preparations are being completed for the moment we have waited for so long. The ship is riding majestically toward us like some great feather, riding as though it was mighty proud of the place it's playing in the world's aviation. The ship is no doubt bustling with activities we can see. Orders are shouted to the crew. The passengers probably lining the windows looking down at the field ahead of them, getting their glimpse of the mooring mast. And these giant flagships standing here, the American airline flagships, waiting to rise them to all points in the United States when they get the ship moored. There are a number of important personages on board, and no doubt the new commander, Captain Max Frisch, is thrilled, too, for this is his great moment, the first time he's commanded the Hindenburg, for in previous flights he acted as a chief officer under Captain Lehmann. It's practically standing still now. They've dropped ropes out of the nose of the ship, and has been taken a hold of down on the field by a number of men. It's starting to rain again. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... It burst into flame. It burst into flame, and it's falling. It's crashing. Watch it. Watch it, folks. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Get this, Charlie. Get this, Charlie. It's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my. Get out of the way, please. It's burning, bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast, and all the folks with me. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, this place is 400 or 500 feet into the sky. It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the passengers screaming around here. I can't even talk to people. His friends are on there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it's just laying there, a massive smoking wreckage. And everybody can hardly breathe and talk and screaming. Lady, I'm sorry. Honestly, I can hardly breathe. I'm going to step inside where I cannot see it. Charlie, that's terrible. Listen, folks, I'm going to have to stop for a minute because I've lost the voice. This is the worst thing I've ever witnessed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back again. I've sort of recovered from the terrific explosion and the terrific crash that occurred just as it was being pulled down to the mooring mast. They're still smoking and flaming and crackling and banging down there. And I don't know how many of the ground crew were under it when it fell. There's not a possible chance for anyone to be saved. The relatives of the people who are waiting here, ready to welcome their loved ones that came off this great ship, are broken up. They're carrying them in to give them first aid and to restore them. Some of them have fainted. And the people are rushing down to the burning ship. The fire trucks have all gone down to see if they can extinguish any of the blaze whatsoever. But the terrible amount of hydrogen gas in it just caused the tail surface broke into flame first. Then there was a terrific explosion, and that's followed by the burning of the nose and the crashing nose into the ground, and everybody tearing back at breakneck speed to get out from underneath it because it was over the people at the time it burst into flames. Now, whether it fell on the people who were witnessing it, we do not know. But as it exploded, they rushed back, and now it's smoking a terrific black smoke floating up into the sky. The flames are still leaping maybe 30, 40 feet from the ground, the entire 811 feet length of it. They're frantically calling for ambulances and things. The wires are being humming with activity. And I've lost my breath several times during this exciting moment here. Will you pardon me just a moment? I'm not going to stop talking. I'm just going to swallow several times until I can keep on. I should imagine that the nose is not more than 500 feet or maybe 700 feet from the mooring mast. They had dropped two ropes, and whether or not some spark or something set it on fire, we don't know, or whether something pulled loose on the inside of the ship, causing a spark and causing it to explode in the tail surface. But everything crashed to the ground, and there's not a possible chance of anybody being saved. I wish I could stop in just a moment and see if I can get my breath again. And Charlie, if you'll fade it out just a minute, I'll come back with more description, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back again. I raced down to the burning ship, and just as I walked up to the ship, climbed over the picket line, I met a man coming out, dazed. He couldn't find his way. I grabbed a hold of him. It's Philip Mangone, A-N-G-O-N-E, of New York. Philip Mangone, he's burned terribly in the hands, and he's burned terribly in the face, his eyebrows, all his hair is burned off, but he's walking and talking plainly and distinctly, and he told me he jumped. He jumped with other passengers. Now, there's a Mr. Spay. It sounds like Spay. We're not sure of it. And he also got out, and we noticed the lines, the different lines, the airship lines and the American Airways. Their ambulances are down there, and they're taking people out of the wreckage. It seems that a number of them jumped clear when the explosion occurred in the tail. Now, I've just been running up with Mr. Mangone and put him in a car. His wife and daughter met him, and I put them in the car with him and sent him to the field hospital with the other passengers who have been saved. Now, the mass of wreckage is still burning, and I want to repeat again something that I may not have gotten cleared in the hysteria of the moment. The explosion occurred in the tail surfaces, in the fins, the part that was highest, after it had nosed in to go down to the mooring mast. Now, whether something slipped in the back and caused the spark to set off the gas, we do not know. You see, they're using hydrogen in this, or they were using hydrogen in this plane, and it is extremely explosive. In fact, they wear velvet and felt shoes when working among the rafters around the hydrogen gas bag. Now, something may have slipped, causing a spark to set off some hydrogen which had leaked out into the structure. It's still burning. I don't know what is burning. Evidently part of the cargo. It's still flaming 10 or 15 feet high. They're still rushing people out of it. Now, it is my sincere hope that as many as possible, and as many as I think are out, I think a majority of the passengers jumped when it came close to the ground, according to what Mr. Mandone told me. He says, thank God he jumped, and we say thank God for him also. And it's still smoking. The wreckage is smoking. They've wired all the available services, fire apparatus, and everything to come rushing in, and doctors and nurses to come down to take care of the people that are being taken out of the burning wreckage. Now, it lays 811 feet of just smoldering ruins now. I couldn't talk when I saw it. I hope that it isn't as bad as I made it sound there at the very beginning. Now, while I get my breath, I'm going to check and see if there are any more saved out of it. All right, Charlie, we'll save it out, and I'll come in just a bit later.
We're listening to the dramatic description of the explosion and the last flight of the Hindenburg, the dirigible, back on May the 6th of 1937. It's 54 years ago tomorrow, as described by Herb Morrison, and as kept recorded by Charlie Nielsen, his engineer, both from WLS in Chicago back in those days. Man, oh man, what a dramatic description. You can certainly feel the emotion of the moment. The man describing this, Herb Morrison, doing an outstanding job. I mean, there's so much smoke and fumes, and he's breathing all of that, and yet he has to go on. He has to swallow a couple of times, probably to regain his composure, and also to continue to breathe. Amazing, amazing. There's more of this, so you stick around and don't touch that dial. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our Nostalgia Digest and Radio Guide. It's a 32-page magazine that comes to you 6 times a year, every other month. And it contains articles from and about the good old days of radio, movies, the big bands, early television, and more. A 1-year subscription is only $12, and you can subscribe when you send your check or money order to Nostalgia Digest, Box 421, Morton Grove, Illinois, 60053. In addition to the good reading in every issue, you will also find our 2-month old-time radio classics calendar, which tells you what we're going to play and when we're going to play it here on WBBM. We're on the air Monday through Friday for 1 full hour at midnight, Saturday and Sunday for 2 full hours beginning at 8 p.m. It'll also tell you if we're not going to be on because of scheduled sports programming, so this is a good way for you to keep in touch with old-time radio classics and our other vintage radio programming. Subscribe now. Send $12 for a 1-year subscription, $22 for 2 years. Send to Nostalgia Digest, Box 421, Morton Grove, 60053. We'll get your first issue out to you by first-class mail just as soon as we hear from you. We think you'll enjoy reading about the good old days of yesteryear. Each issue is filled with informative articles, personal memories, lots of photos, even letters from listeners. So come on and join the club. Get in on the fun. Add to your pleasure as you enjoy these great radio classics. Subscribe to our Nostalgia Digest and Radio Guide. $12 for 1 year, $22 for 2 years. Send to Nostalgia Digest, Box 421, Morton Grove, Illinois, 60053. I'm Chuck Schaden. You're listening to Old Time Radio Classics from Chicago. This is our Sunday night Nostalgia Night here on WBBM News Radio 78. Might have actually heard this original broadcast 54 years ago of that last flight of the Hindenburg, but it certainly was a classic moment in the history of radio, and certainly demonstrates what radio can do. A couple of years later, actually the next year, when Orson Welles was doing his War of the Worlds broadcast, they pulled out the recording of this to listen to what Herb Morrison was describing, and they were trying to get that kind of emotion as the actors on the Mercury Theater were describing the landing of Martian airships. Well, this is for real. It was for real back on May the 6th of 1937 as Herb Morrison continues his description of the explosion of the dirigible, the Hindenburg.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, we're back with another important bulletin. Mr. O'Loughlin from the Consumers Company of Chicago was one of the passengers aboard the airship when it burst into flames, and he managed to get free of the wreckage, and he's standing here right by my side. I can't ask him to go on there, but he wants me to tell the folks that he is all right. Mr. O'Loughlin of the Consumers Company of Chicago, and here is another man coming in. He's burned considerably, Mr. Otto Clemens. Mr. Otto Clemens is safe, although he's burned quite badly. Now, the Clemens isn't burned at all? Thank you. He's sitting right here. That's composed. And is that his mother with him?
No, that's
a friend of his? Well, Mr. Clemens, how did you manage to get out alive?
We have to rausgekommen.
Ja.
Ich bin, was ist das Radio? Ja. Ich bin von der Passagierkammer, also oben vom Speiseraum, zu meinem Koffer gegangen. In dem Moment kommt nun eine Flamme und das Schiff fängt an zu schwanken, sinkt nach unten und ich springe dann an der Luke heraus, die unten neben der Bar ist. Unten am unteren Gang, wo jetzt die neuen Kabinen eingebaut sind. Ne?
He was on his way to his cabin
You tell the folks.
He was on his way to the cabin,
Yes.
when the flash came,
Yes.
and he jumped out.
He jumped out of the cabin.
Jumped out.
And he didn't get hurt a bit in the same
No,
way?
he didn't hurt a bit.
And
Not hurt at all.
oh, I'm so thankful for you. And you tell him in your language that we're thankful that he got out alive. And now, Charlie, to fade it out just a minute so I see if I can get some more information. And now, friends, I want to tell you, I'm back here. I want to tell you that the wreckage is still flaming out there, but I have some very good news for you. I just came from the front of the building where they have set up an emergency station, and they claim that between 25 and 30, that is the estimate, between 25 and 30 are saved out of the wreckage. Now, I have here a total of 39 passengers and 61 crew. That would make them even 100, but they tell me there were about 106 on board, so that makes 35 out of, between 25 and 30 out of 106 so far saved and accounted for, that have been identified. It's still smoking. They can't get through the back part of the wreckage yet. It would be impossible because the flames are, let's see, about 10 or 15 feet leaping in the air. The front part of the ship is intact for about 30 feet back. The nose of it is intact. It evidently had exploded and burned before that part of the ship struck the ground, or even though it was the first part of the ship that should have struck the ground. It didn't. The burning mass held the back of the wreckage into the air, and that, I think, is what saved the passengers, for the simple reason that it gave them a time to jump. If the explosion had occurred in the front of the airship, they wouldn't have had time to jump because it would have blown the cabin right out of the bottom of the dirigible. But inasmuch as the flaming mass held the wreckage in the air, that made it possible for them to jump, and we're so thankful because from where we could see, we saw at first every one of them, and the ground crew were gone. But I guess the ground crew had a chance to get out, and it was back, just a little bit back of the picket line, so that none of the spectators got underneath the wreckage. We're so thankful for that. And in checking, not a single spectator, only the persons engaged in the lowering of the giant ship and the people who were on board. Now, we have not received any information as to whether the crew escaped, any of the crew escaped, because they were evidently up in the working part of the ship and wouldn't be down in the passenger compartment. Now, how they managed to jump, I have not been able to determine yet, unless they broke through the windows. Or there may be a possibility that the windows are open. They're open at the top so that they could climb out over and drop down, the man tells me right here. They jumped through the window. Oh, they didn't stop to open the window. Mr. Clemens here jumped right through the glass window, and it's fine that it was of a breakable nature that they could get out, and therefore save their lives. Now, we can hear the sirens as they're tearing down here beyond us to fight the balance of the fire. The people are crowded down around there. I haven't a very good vision of it. Yes, I do now, right through an open window here. And the people are divided, and I can still see the mass of wreckage burning. I'm standing in the airplane hangar, the airplane division of the Lakehurst field. It has stopped raining altogether, and it's not hindering the rescue work. If it was muddy and slippery, it would hinder the taking out of survivors. Now, I'm going to stop for a breath of air and see if I can check up and find out if any more or any members of the crew have been saved. All right, Charlie, just a minute. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I just walked back in here into the office after checking up with a member of the crew. It happened to be Hindenburg. He was a member of the crew. He's wearing a white coat. I don't know what he was. Maybe one of the stewards. He looks like he was one of the stewards. And another man here. And did you know the other man's name? Did you know that? Oh, no, yes, I know, Mr. Clement. All right, and there's another man just walked up. Mr. Hindenburg, too, I want to tell you, is uninjured, and he walked in here with several bundles under his arm. Now, what that man had in his arms when he fell out of the dirigible, I don't know, but he has two paper bundles, and there's not a bit of scorching on either bundle. Now, how it happened, I couldn't begin to tell you, because he landed in, it's fortunate that it was over where there's deep sand, and when they jumped down out of the dirigible, out of the cabin, they lit into the sand, and they didn't receive any broken bones. The ones I have talked to, they're all standing in here, getting first aid treatment, and they're awfully shocked. Naturally, they would be, but there's no arms or legs broken. They're walking around here talking about it, and some of them are talking in German, and I have to have an interpreter to find out exactly who they are and what capacity they were on the ship. Now, I'm going to stand by for another bulletin. I started they just received now the 4 or 5 airplanes coming over. I'm going to take a look and see. Just a second. Maybe we can hear. They're coming. No. Yes, they're coming in. There's several ships coming in. They've wireless for them. And perhaps you can hear down at the end of the field, I don't know, the sirens are screaming, the mess, the wreckage is still burning. It's been burning now, I should say, approximately 25 minutes or more. It has been burning constantly. What it is that's burning, I don't know, unless it is the gasoline and oil supply, because the smoke is terrific. It's billowing into the sky for a third of a mile high. It is the oil supply. It is the oil supply because the gasoline supply would have been consumed by this time. And that makes it doubly hard for them to fight the fire on account of it being oil. There's a lot of sand here, and if they can get close enough to throw sand on it, that might stop some of the blazing. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop just a moment. They're needing some help, and I'm going to see if I can't go out and do my part. Just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been 15 minutes since I talked to you last, although we're continuously transcribing this for you. And the fire is still burning out on the field. It is dark now, almost dark, and masses of flame are still leaping from the wreckage. Now, an American Airlines flagship just took off with 21 passengers on board, and the stewardess and crew of 2. Now, the stewardess is a registered nurse. She has a first aid kit on board the plane, and they have injured in it, rushing them to New York for aid. Now, how many are on board, I don't know, but we have received that 15 out of 16 so far are living. 15 out of 16, and also I want to mention something else here too. That some of the crew have been able to get out. Now there's an officer, a German officer here, speaking to men of his own race, and I cannot understand him, and I'm not going to interrupt and bother him. But the United States Navy. Now let me make a mention here of the United States Navy and what they are doing in this crisis. I never have seen such a smoothly working. Systematized action in my life. The men have raced out there with the firefighting apparatus, had the survivors in the cars, and right to the hospital before I had time to run down after talking to you to get into the wreckage. Commander Charles Rosendahl, the great commander of the United States Navy, is out there directing all activities. He's doing a man-sized job for the man that he is, and our credit goes to him. We take off our hat to him. And those sailors and the Marines and the regular Army men and the pilots of both Army and Navy who have flown in here are out there doing their darndest to get the people out of the wreckage. They're still taking people out. Some of them are badly injured. A number of them are dead. Now, we told you there are approximately 106 on board, and so far we have only known of about 25 safely getting away from the wreckage, and we are sure of about 16. Now, if we're going to broadcast any longer here, I'm going to have to step over to the window where the mass of wreckage is still burning out there to get a better view. I see people walking back and forth in front of an automobile circling it, and inasmuch as that's an oil fire, as I told you before, they can't do much with it. They can't get near it. It's so hot. And I'm going to stand by for another few minutes until I get accurate data to give you. So just stand by. I'll be back with you. I'm back again, ladies and gentlemen, with more information about this terrible disaster down Lakehurst, New Jersey, in which the Hindenburg crashed while being moored at the mooring mast. 3 children have been saved. 3 children were brought over just for the excitement of the trip, and we're going to be taken back. 3 children by the name of Daner, D-O-E-H-N-E-R. 3 children by the name of Daner. There was also a radio officer. One of the radio officers of the Hindenburg jumped through the glass. They had breakable glass in all the windows. Naturally, they would have at that altitude and flying up where it wouldn't hit anything. And he managed to jump, to kick his way out through the deck onto the sand. Now, I figure that there was about 60 feet, 60-foot drop from the ship. The tail went up in the air, and as I told you on previous occasions, that it held up there long enough for them to jump from the cabin. Now, his name, this radio officer's name, is Schweikard. S-C-H-W-E-I-K-A-R-D. And all I could understand him to say was that he jumped. And evidently was thrown too at the same time because the ship was vibrating. There were 3 distinct explosions. If I remember correctly, I'll have to check back in the earlier part of this broadcast and see if that was not right. The tail surface, then the center section, and then the nose of it destroyed. It's still burning, and I imagine it's now 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Did you get that? 7:30. And the plane is still burning. Rather, the dirigible is still burning, and I think that, if I'm not mistaken, it has been burning an hour. And I'm right in that, Charlie, just about 1 hour. Because it had stopped raining, and they were coming in for this landing and mooring. We have not yet been able to find out what caused the explosion, but it's very evident that it was a spark set the nitrogen on fire. There wasn't any electricity. There was no electrical storm. It was raining previously to that, but no electricity could have set it on fire unless it was static electricity, because we had a thunderstorm, a very light thunderstorm, but there was a lot of electricity in the air, so maybe a spark jumped from one of the beams in the tail surfaces across. That would be a logical interpretation of it. Inasmuch as they were coming in close proximity to the ground, the static electricity may have increased and caused an explosion like that. Now, we're trying to get more information, and between these broadcasts, we're doing all we can to help the people who are injured. We have most of the living ones in here back in the German office in the back part. That is the Hindenburg office, back part of the hangar. They're here. I can't understand half of them. We have an interpreter, and we're getting as much information as we can. Now, Mr. Byrne from the Chicago office, and Mr. Reinstrom from the Chicago offices of the American Airlines, that's right, Charlie, American Airlines office, have just came out of the radio room, which is to my back here, and told us that they have sent for all of the available stewardesses who are on call at Newark to rush by the plane that took the injured people to Newark and bring them back to Lakehurst. Now, just as they are so accurate here, the American Airlines, that I'll tell you what they have done. They have established a directional beam that will guide the ships in here at any hour. Now these ships can leave Newark and find the field, although from the sky they could see the burning wreckage and it would be easily to find, but they can come in here and land, be guided in here and land with their landing lights. So we're expecting a plane load of stewardesses. They're all registered nurses, and they'll be in here very shortly. Now, Commander Rosendahl is over in the main part, over in the lighter-than-air hangar, which is just slightly longer than the Hindenburg. And they have established an emergency hospital base there that pull tables together, and it houses the Los Angeles and 3 blimps in there. Now, whether they're taking any of them out to make available room for hospitalization, I do not know, but I will find out and come back later. All right, Charlie, if you'll fade it out, I'll be back in a second.
You're listening to the very dramatic account of the last flight of the Hindenburg.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back again with another play. I want to tell you that Nelson Morris of Chicago, Nelson Morris, very well-known Chicagoan, on board, is saved. He's safe. We were talking to him, one of the men here, and he is okay. Now, in giving you these names, these German names, such as Dana and Schweikart and so forth, those are the names the German people have given to me. And being unable to understand the individual person, I'm giving the name as it sounded to me. Now that is just exactly what is happening. The wreckage is still burning, and we're waiting for a plane to come in with supplies and so forth, and emergency first aid apparatus. And as the events occur, I'm going to come in on this and tell you about it. So just stand by a few minutes, and I'll have more information for you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back again now. It's 8:15. We're terribly upset about this all. The fire's still burning just a little bit now. It's an oil fire, and it's a bad one to fight. We have one of the stewardess from the ship of the American Airlines, one of the flagships that came in this afternoon to meet the Hindenburg when it landed. What is your name?
Miss Tyler.
Miss Tyler. Miss Tyler, would you tell me where you've been over? You've been over in the lighter-than-air building, haven't you?
I've been in the hospital.
Will you go ahead and tell them about it? Do you know the hospital?
I've been in the hospital. I've seen this terrible calamity over there.
And have you been working? Have you been working and helping get them out? How many do you have over there? You know?
I don't have any idea how many, but it's just an awful lot over there.
Do you think there's 25 or 30?
Oh, there's more than that.
All right, I won't talk anymore. Well, thank you very much, because this is for future records, and anyone that we can get to do for this information, I really certainly appreciate it. I want to thank you very much. My friends, we just received word that the American Airlines planes are going to be in here in just a very few minutes with all the available registered nurses and their stewardesses at Newark. We're very short of doctors, however, according to the report. The medical doctors of the staff here at Lakehurst, the Navy men, and that is station here are working frantically, doing their best with these nurses who are trained, of course, to the nth degree. They're all registered nurses. They're doing their part in alleviating suffering. Now, this young lady told you we don't know how many are over in the lighter-than aircraft which houses the Los Angeles. Ships are coming in and out constantly here at the field. They have fixed up an emergency lighting system. Of course, they have the floodlights, but there's an emergency oil fire pot system worked out, and the American Airlines, of course, has a direction beam into Lakehurst, so that the American Airliners are landing here with their crews and the nurses and doctors and medical supplies. Now, we have just received information that Mr. Lehman, the other Captain Lehman, and Captain Cruz, both of them are commanding officers of the lighter-than aircraft of Hindenburg and the sister ship that they were going to construct over there. And we have received information they were saved, and there's another member of the crew. I couldn't get his name, but they were saved and they're in the hospital. Now, there's one of the men just walked in here for first aid, which we gave him. His hands, his arms behind the back of his neck, and the explosion had blown the tops of his shoes off back to the heels. They were just sticking on by laces, and a little bit of the felt covering of the soles of the shoes still on his feet. His socks weren't burned off or anything, just the front toes of his shoes. The heels and the soles were intact. Now that is very strange, showing the terrific force of the explosion as he jumped through the window. And if the sand hadn't been heavy, outside, underneath where the dirigible was coming into the land, to be moored to the mast there, none of them would have been saved. Now, of course, the 42 Navy men frantically searching among the debris down there, which is smoldering now, and every once in a while shooting up a bright flame and sparks, searching to see if they can get any further survivors. Now, these three boys that I told you about have left out of the slight explosion in the back end of the ship now. I see flames flying up again, evidently some of the oil supply. And we're going to try and get statistics that have covered everything with the pictures for official records. We're still in the American, the United States Navy aeronautical hangar, the heavy of an aircraft hangar. There are three planes here. We have the customs officers and all this crew working on the wounded people, and they picked out the tables out there and made sort of an emergency cost system for them. The United States Government Post Office is sent over there for to cooperate with the nurses in taking the injured to these tables. All of the government services have been trained to the nth degree. I find that great stress. Tom is just going about the business in the order and giving service. They and the American Airlines they certainly are doing a remarkable job. I'm going to come back in and a half minute straight across Central Standard Time, and it's almost 2 hours since the explosion. Eastern Standard Time, 6:32 Eastern Standard Time, and it is now almost 2 hours, and there's still spasmodic explosions in the oil. I would like to provide more information for you. I can start later. A few minutes ago, and we will fix the drive and open rather than an aircraft hangar, and over there. Between 40 and some of them have died since they were brought in, and not so many, but some of them have never even been scratched. If there's any more confirmation on it, I will come in again and give it to you. We're trying to think of another. If we went through the air hangar here, get to our post here and take the people as they come in to report to the general or report someone who has died. And all of the people are sending cars out. They're cooperating. Everybody's doing his utmost to bring about end to this terrific tragedy. Get back to price later.
In 1937, the description of the the Hindenburg, the last flight of the Hindenburg as described by Herbert Morrison,